Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good night, everyone. My name is Adam Cortez Davis. My number is 2310-7310-14. So tonight I will discuss about the material that I have read, which is about second language learning. Now, guys, first of all, I would like to apologize because I'm not really feeling that well. But okay, let's go on to discuss about the material. So, second language learning. Second language learning is just like the name. So you have a first language acquisition, which is how you acquired your first language, and how the second language learning is how you will the process of learning a second language, basically. Now, second language learning, there's two types actually. There are the people that acquire second language by living in that area of language or surrounding themselves. For example, I want to study English. I am Indonesian, so I go to America and I study English and I surround myself with people talking English. Or the second one is a person who wants to study a second language, but they do not surround themselves in an environment of a native speaking language. For example, I want to learn English and I live in Indonesia, which there is no one that speaks in English in everyday living. So basically it's like that. And there are two ways actually to study language acquisitions. First way is to acquire to acquire language, or the second one is to learn the language. To learn the language is more, you get more knowledge from it. For example, you know more about the correct grammatical way of studying it, and then the tenses and like the verb, the adjectives, everything. But for the acquirement method, it's not really, you don't really know much about the knowledge, like the core, but you're more fluent than the learned version, because you surround yourselves and you acquire that from people talking around you. Now, you would be more fluent, but you wouldn't know that much about grammar. It would be the other way around with the learning part, because when you learn, you only learn theoretically, but you don't really practice it by acquiring it from other people, basically like that. Now, but by I'm really sorry, guys. But despite acquiring it from many people, age does play a role here, because most old people that acquire a language from, for example, living in America or wherever, most of the people that go to America, for example, at the age of above puberty, because puberty is a very important level here, most of them cannot really have a native speaker accent. So they still have, for example, if they lived in Indonesia, they would still have an Indonesian accent a little bit. Not 100%, and not all people, but most of the people that do this method. Now, not only adults though, but teenagers, they might not run into this issue, but they might run into the issue of being embarrassed. So the teenagers, most of the times, they're embarrassed, for example, to use English on their everyday lives because they're afraid to get mocked by their friends, for example, because, for example, if you live in Indonesia and you're a teenager and you start to speak English like with an American accent or with an England accent, and then, because I live in Indonesia, and I will assume 90% of the time you will be harassed, or you will be slandered in a way, right? So that's one of the reasons, that's one of the key roles why second language acquisitions for people outside of the native speaking country is hard to improve. Now, but it depends on the person, right? So for example, if you're older than a teenager, you probably don't even care about any people, because you're older. Teenagers are like, oh man, I'm really afraid of getting bullied and stuff like that. So, and if you're a child as well, if you're a child, you don't really know what you're doing, and it doesn't really matter. So each age level has these different type of problems to encounter problems they encounter during studying second language acquisitions. So then now I will discuss about the methods that people normally use or would use when they want to study a second language. Now, the first one is called grammatical translated method. I'm not sure if I'm correct. Now, that method is when you study from the book, like the normal way of studying. So you memorize as much vocabulary, and then you study the grammatical rules, and then you would focus more on the writing part rather than focusing on your speaking, because it's more written and it's more memorized. But that's the problem, because, for example, I want to study French, and most of the rules are written on my head. So when a native speaker of French tries to talk to me, and then I would have to have a pause and think about how to say it grammatically correct. So that's the problem. Most of the times with that, it's not really automatic. You need time to really click until it clicks, then you could start talking. That's the problem with the first method. Now there's a second method, which is called the audio method, in which you would repeat an audio excessively in your mind to get used to. Now, I would say that is better for interacting with native speakers, but the problem is it would be boring for you to study in that way, that method, because it's just audio, and it seems kind of impossible to repeat everyday conversations and have you memorized and know exactly what to say every time. So those are the two methods, and they both have let's say a little bit of issues. All right, now the third method is called I forgot what it's called, but the third method is when, for example, you want to study a language, but you only choose a specific reason. For example, I want to study Japanese. Why? Because I have clients in Japan. I'm a business person. I need that to, for example, to give me a presentation speech in Japan about my business. Now, I would focus on how to learn Japanese for business. Now, there are courses for that, and I think, and according to linguists, these courses or whatever you take is better, because you only need that, for example, for business purposes, rather than studying the whole fundamentals of English grammar, Japanese grammar, Japanese tenses, and other stuff like that, which will make it harder for yourselves. Why don't you just focus on one specific region of language which you need, and then really focus on it and get fluent in it? Then you could start expanding whenever you need to. Now, that's the best way, according to the linguists, to actually manage to get second language, I guess. Now, I think that's it for my video, I guess. Bye bye. Thank you guys for watching, and don't forget to subscribe.